Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman, and we are welcoming today Amanda Gonzales. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Amanda. Amanda is a mom, and that is not a requirement to be on the show, but it does seem to be a situation that comes up a lot. So she lives in San Antonio, Texas, which is an amazing place. If any of you have ever been to San Antonio, it's a really fun place. Our daughter has given us the opportunity to travel by her living in different places, and she's now living in Houston. So that made us go to San Antonio and lots of fun places in Texas. She is a 44-year-old wife, a mother of three, ages 19, 6, and 5. A little bit of a spread there. We're going to talk about that. She recently retired as an esthetician and skincare professional after 22 years. And she is now settling into her role as a stay-at-home mom. She's also kind of an empty nester, but also homeschooling those little girls. And we're going to talk a little bit about her youngest daughter, who has a handicap that she's had since birth, and a lot of other things. And I love that Amanda included her favorite quote. She says, "Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't." And I think that's a great way to start the show. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And you know what? I love the story of how Amanda and I met, because I love to vacation yearly. I go to a resort in St. George, Utah called Red Mountain Resort. I'd been there many, many times. And I don't know whether it was an ad that popped up. I don't know. I think it was an ad for Red Mountain, but Brooke Burke, if any of you know of her, advertised that she was going to be doing a retreat at Red Mountain. And I thought, well, that sounds fabulous, because I'm planning on going there anyway. So she did a retreat, and Amanda was also another guest at the retreat. And so that is how we met. And I cannot say enough about meeting people just randomly through activities that you choose to put yourself out to. A lot of times it does depend on personalities. Some people are very introverted. Some people are very extroverted. And I kind of consider myself an extrovert introvert, but I am willing to try things I've never done before. So a lot of times I get myself into situations that, 2 days before the event, I'm like, oh, crud, what did I do? I don't want to do this. This is going to be scary, but you paid for it, so you have to do it. And then because of that, you meet wonderful people like Amanda. So Amanda, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing well. Thank you. It was amazing getting to meet you too, because when you started talking about your story and about TJ, and my eyes kind of lit up, because I felt like, oh, there's someone here who probably already gets me, and we haven't even gotten to really talk. Like that was an amazing time for me, and getting to know you, and that was pretty awesome. And I do enjoy following your son and all your children, and you're an inspiration. You really are.
You're so sweet. That's so true. I mean, we are a tribal people. I do think people have to admit that humans, Homo sapiens, are tribal, and we do look for people that we share things in common with. And being the parent of a child that has disabilities, we don't have the same experiences, because disabilities are on a spectrum, but we do have similarities in areas such as caregiving or time, restrictions, things that other people maybe don't. Although it's interesting, because my daughter was saying the other day that she has a son that's autistic, and she had to pick him up, and the person that she was with said, "Oh, well, do you want to just stop by and drop him off at home, and then blah, blah, blah." And she said, "I can't do that, even though he's 9, I can't drop him off." But she didn't recognize that. She was just thinking, oh, you have a 9-year-old, I have a 9-year-old, and they can stay home for a few minutes. But then she said, but then I had to recognize that what this particular woman was going through, I also cannot conceive of the trials that this other woman was going through. So it's one of those walking a mile in someone else's shoes type thing. Mm-hmm. And so now that you've brought it up, tell us a little bit about your children. And I also want you to emphasize where you were in your life as far as your, like, this is my journey that I've set up for myself. And I feel this is where my self-esteem is. This is where my self-worth is, as I was entering into these adventures called life. So start from the beginning and tell us, I mean, 22 years, you're not that old. You couldn't have started when you were 3. So, as an esthetician. So tell us, kind
Yeah.
of give us a little journey story here.
So I started working at a very young age. I wanted to become a nurse, and that didn't exactly work out for me. And then I somehow by accident became a makeup artist, and then from being a makeup artist went into going to trade school and becoming an esthetician. And I was very young, in my 20s, and then got married very young and had my son. I was about 24. Um, and so I kind of started life a little earlier than some of my friends, and it was rough, and that didn't work out for me. I thought I was very young and immature and just didn't know, and so I found myself a single mom, pretty much lost everything. It was just me and my son, and my parents were kind enough to take us in, and I was able to. I mean, I had times where I tell this story a lot because I feel like somebody will hear it and be like, oh, I've been there. But I remember trying to run my business, and I was a small business owner, and I didn't know a whole lot about logistics of business. I only knew my trade and that my clients liked me and I was good at what I did, but the money side of it, not so much. And I remember going through the drive right after my divorce, going through the drive-through and just not having any money to feed my son. I didn't have any money. And I remember reaching in and getting change, and I bought him a Happy Meal, I think it was at McDonald's or something. And he says, Mama, aren't you hungry? And I was like, yeah, I am, but I didn't have enough. So, I've been all the way down where I couldn't even feed my kid. I felt like the most loser, worst mom in the world. And so that I hit hard times in the beginning, and then my family came in and helped me. And so I think I experienced a lot of stuff, more than like I said, more than some of my friends did.
Right, right.
And then years later down the line, I met my now husband, and we, here I had my son already, and he, took my son in, treated him like his own. And his dream was he wanted to be a father. And so he wanted to have more kids, and that was kind of the journey that we decided on, and that I would keep working. And so we were raising my son, and then we had Anina, who's my 6-year-old, and she was not, I was 38 by the time I had her.
Right.
And she had a birth defect. She was born with an open palate up in the roof of her mouth, and she had to have reconstructive surgery for that. But we were really, and I talk about it now like it was no big deal, but at the time it was traumatic for us because we had to figure out how to feed her. The milk would come out her no. It was just kind of a nightmare for us. And then we got over that, and then she was about 4 months old. We just got the feeding thing down, and I found out I was pregnant with the youngest.
Oh,
that
she
was a
was
big.
only 4 months.
That's right.
Wow. Interesting.
That was a big surprise, and I think I sat in my closet and kind of cried because I was like, I'm already overwhelmed. I just figured out how to feed this one, and now I've got another one on the way. And so then Alessia was born, and we had a big shocker. That was a big surprise. She has Apert syndrome, the youngest. It's acrocephalosyndactyly. So that's the long word, but the short word of it is Apert syndrome. And it's just a word for skeletal abnormality. So it's genetic. It happens from time of conception. because a lot of times you're like, well, oh, people are like, well, what happened? I mean, were
Right.
you doing this or that? Or it's
Right.
not really anybody's fault. It's just kind of a genetic misfire,
Right. Right.
um, it causes premature fusion of the bones, the skull, the hands, the feet. It causes facial abnormalities, nasal breathing and speech problems. Her face is different. Her eyes were, because of the skull and the pressure, her eyes were coming out, kind of bulging, and her little hands looked like rosebuds.
Mm.
That was shocking because we didn't know, and there's no real test. There's no prenatal test for that. That sometimes they'll catch it in a sonogram,
Mm.
but within the APERT community, the APERT community is very tight knit because it's so rare. It's like 1 in 65,000, 1 in 65 to 80 something thousand.
Okay.
So, but that we didn't know, and a lot of the other APERT families said they didn't know either, because it's hard to tell with just the black and white sonogram.
Right.
And it's not like Down syndrome where they have a specialized test for it. They just don't, because it's so rare.
Right. Right. So were her fingers fused then? Is that what, so she had all 10 fingers, but they were fused together. So it just had a kind of a round look to it.
Right. Almost like a baby doll. They were all fused and it was smooth.
Okay.
You couldn't even see where her fingers started and stopped. I mean, there was no definition there. It was just a little smooth, kind of like a mitten hand is what we
Okay.
call it.
Okay.
And, that was shocking, obviously, to see that. And she's had a lot of surgeries. So she does not have joints. She doesn't have working joints. So they've done surgery to separate those fingers. But obviously, her hands don't look like yours and mine. They look so
Right.
different.
Right.
They did what they could, and they did an amazing job. But she doesn't have she can't bend her fingers.
Hmm.
So it makes dressing herself very hard because there's no joints there. So they're very stiff hands, and she gets frustrated. She
Right.
gets frustrated sometimes. Her feet are the same. Her feet are all of her toes are webbed, fused. And some people choose to separate the toes and some people don't. We decided not to, because basically if they separate the toes, it makes a very wide foot, and it makes it
Oh.
very hard to find shoes. And they said that it shouldn't affect her. So
Doesn't affect her balances because she still has the platform to stand on
right. So they said she should be fine. She does have trouble getting around, walking. She will have to have a lot of surgeries. And there are some of the kids in our APERT family that didn't make it. I mean, the past couple of years, we had some that had complications from surgeries, etc. Because the first surgeries that they have is the cranio and the brain, because they're born with their skull, those skull bones that are supposed to be open, the fontanelles,
right.
Those are fused together like an adult's would be, like a grown person. And so they have to go in and separate those bones to allow the brain to grow, so there's no pressure on the brain. And so she's had 3 of those surgeries, and then she's had a forehead advancement surgery. So those surgeries can be very invasive, and some of the kids don't come out of that. So we're blessed. We're blessed to have her,
Right.
through all of that. She's pretty amazing, but again, a lot of work. I see her. She's 5, but her sister's 6, and her sister jumps in and helps her a lot, which I love.
Right.
But I see her struggling with her clothing and
right.
All the things that what you mentioned about your daughter, and how the 2 boys were the same age, but they just really weren't. It was a little bit different because of their, they were just different in many ways. So that's kind of how I see her with other kids.
Now, when she was born, because she was a newborn, and though her skull had fused, but it was still a little baby skull. So so did they do surgery immediately, or what was the time frame in between those cranial surgeries?
I want to say she was about 4 months old when she had her first craniosurgery. And then before the age of 1, I think, I want to say she had 2 of them.
Wow.
And then, yeah, 2 or 3. Gosh, there was just so many.
Right.
Yeah, they had to do it. So they had to do it within a certain time, I guess, because
Oh,
of the growth.
I see.
So, yeah, so they had to do it within a certain time, and they did all of them so far that they think she's going to need. And the forehead advancement she just had about, I believe it was 2 years ago.
Hmm.
So she was a little older when she had that one. And then the APERT kids, when they're about 9 or 10,
Mhm.
they do the full they do the full it's a very massive craniosurgery.
Okay.
And what it is it's the full face advancement they have to do, because they have apnea, they have sleep apnea because their nasal bones are so constricted that they can't really breathe out of their nose.
Right. Right.
So she's a big snorer, she snores a lot.
Mhm.
And so the big surgery that she'll have at 8 or 9 is to help the sleep apnea and to open up her nasal bones. And also, it changes the shape of their face,
Yeah.
changes the shape of their nose to be more open and aesthetically just look a little bit nicer. But also, the functionality is going to hopefully be there for her that she needs to breathe. So,
Right.
um, that's the most major one. I feel like we've turned a corner and we've got the worst surgeries behind us now.
But
So
I think that's something that people, and I'm sure they don't think about it because it's just whatever. But when you go into surgery, of course, they always try to tell you what the possibility of what could happen. And most people are like, yeah, whatever. But there are like I was just talking to a doctor, and because my son has to have his baclofen pump replaced, and I said, oh, I'm just dreading it because he has. If you list the consequences of what could happen from a surgery, pick one, he'll have it every single time. Even something as simple as having his wisdom teeth taken out. It's like dry socket, whatever. Yep, he's going to have that. And he had one surgery that I think it was also a baclofen pump replacement, and he aspirated. So it doesn't have anything to do with the surgery or his cerebral palsy. It's just a surgical thing that he aspirated, and he almost died. So it's not so much the disability or the amazing things that the medical community can do now for these people. It's the actual idea that anytime you go into surgery, there are risks involved. And you've got someone that, like you say, before the age of 1, they've already had 3 or 4 major surgeries. Every single time that anesthesia goes anywhere near them or whatever, there's this risk of your life changing. But you've got a baby when you're having this baby, and you're doing surgery, and then you're doing visits at the hospital, and then you're doing recovery things. Who helped you? Somebody had to help you.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
Mom,
It's
dad, did
it's
they step in?
my parents were amazing. My parents pretty much saved the day. My sister and her husband were amazing. They live here in San Antonio.
Okay.
My husband's parents at the time, I mean, they even brought us some, food, brought us meals. Um, my mom and dad would take turns, because here's the crazy part. I had at one point 2 of my daughters having a surgery, I want to say within 2 weeks of each other. One of
That's what
them
I was
had
going to
her,
ask, if the palate thing
yeah,
was still going on at this time. So go
yes, it
ahead.
was.
Yeah.
So she was like maybe 18 months old. So while she was having her surgery, and that was a pretty crazy surgery, because he had to go in and reconstruct the whole roof of her mouth, because she didn't have there was a hole there. So he
Right.
had to
Right.
make tissue there. And so they suture it, but that palate is kind of loose and it all kind of heals together. And so that, trying to feed her after that. And then I've got the little one 2 weeks later that I believe she had a cranial and a sinus surgery. They try to, the other thing is she had duplicate, or not duplicate, they did surgeries where it was like, we're going to do this, but since she's already under, we're going to do this also.
Oh, right, right.
And so they wouldn't have to keep putting her under. So whatever she needed, all the surgeons would try to jump on and do that. And
Okay,
so
now
I had one.
that's a
Mhm.
frustrating thing, because I remember when I had my cesarean when TJ was born, and I remember saying to the doctor, hey, this would be a great time. Let's just do a tummy tuck. And what else could we do while I've got, we can't do that. Now you're telling me actually they could have. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah. But oh my,
Ooh, I know.
yeah.
I would have asked for that too with
Yeah. It's
the
like,
little
well,
one.
you're
I was
in
like,
there.
yeah,
Yeah, I know.
can you just
Interesting.
can you just tighten me up, please?
Yeah. I mean, while you're cutting open skin, let's take off a couple inches. Yeah. Anyway, it's funny.
I
Yeah.
would agree. I would do it.
So you've
But yeah,
got
no.
2 babies. I'm assuming that your husband had amazing medical insurance. What is happening with all of this hospitalization financially?
So this is another really interesting fact here. But my husband was working, he's an insurance broker, and he was at the time working for a firm, and he was an employee of that firm. And he had been wanting to go out on his own and start his own brokerage.
Right, right.
But that takes a lot of, you
Yeah.
need investors, and you really need help with that. And at the time, with everything we were going through, that was tough. So yeah, that's where he was. And I totally lost my train of thought. What you asked
Well,
me.
financially, having, those
Financially.
medical bills must have
Okay.
just been astounding.
So the I qualified for a program. My mother has Shawnee heritage. So
Oh,
I actually have my great grandfather was a registered Shawnee Indian under the Cherokee Nation.
oh
And
my,
so I have family members that were on the Dawes Act. And so we have this kind of a rich tradition, family history that goes back for
right.
the Shawnee people. I mean, I have relatives that came over on the Trail of Tears. It's
Oh,
pretty amazing. But because my grandmother insisted that all of our names be registered with the Cherokee, it's a Cherokee Nation, but it's a Shawnee tribe. We're
right,
Shawnee.
right.
Um, so we have enough Native American blood that we qualify, you know, and so we got under the insurance that we chose, we actually got a subsidy. And so that insurance that we got was a Native American plan. And because my daughters are Native American,
Right.
we have not paid a dime,
Oh, that's so amazing.
not a dime.
There's your retribution. There's the retribution for
Yeah. Yes.
like you say, the Trail
Yeah.
of Tears and the injustice that was done. It's like,
Yes.
I'm so naive and went through a school system that never taught things like that. I'm just now. I mean, I'm documentary. My poor husband is like, are you ever going to come out of the, I mean, what are you watching now? I'm like, well, I'm done with Roman history and we're moving on to the Trail of Tears, I mean, I'm just absorbing all of this history that I knew nothing about. And the
Yeah.
whole colonization of this country is new to me. And I'm just like, what? It just, bleh. I'm sad about that. I'm sad that I was so naive, but anyway, I'm grateful that
Yeah.
the program was there. I can't even imagine. So,
It was pretty awesome. At first it was a little bumpy because not too many people had heard of the plan, and we had a little bit of problems when we first got there, and the insurance company was kind of giving us problems. So it's not like we didn't have to fight.
yeah.
I had to do a lot of fighting in the beginning, and a lot of fighting. And then once we were over that initial phase of, yes, here we are, we're not going away. This
Right.
is what you offered us.
Right.
Then it was smooth sailing after that, but it was a lot of fighting in the beginning. And so
And,
now we kind of know.
and you know what? I think that's such an important thing to say, because
Mhm.
I remember the last surgery that TJ had it's in the middle of COVID, and I took him in, and I think I may have mentioned this last time, but they're in the middle of COVID, so they're following this protocol that they've set up for everybody. And they said, well, we're going to take him up to his room now, and you can't go with him. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I have to go with him. And they're like, well, actually you can't. And I said, okay, well then we're going to go home, because I'm not, And eventually they came back and they said, okay, you can go with him. And then I found out from actually, I have another podcast that I'm doing next week with this amazing woman, but she, I was telling this story on like Facebook and she said, well, actually the Americans with Disability Acts, and she had all this information that I didn't have. And so you have to fight for what you know is right. And it doesn't matter what the authority is or where this hierarchy is that you think you can't cross over or push through. You have to fight for what you know is right. And that's such a part of when we talk about becoming visible. If you can't fight for yourself, that's where you get lost. And to just accept things as they are because an authority figure told you that that's the way it is, there's so many wrongs that are done because of that. And it's sad, exactly what you said, that you had to fight so hard for that, but thank heavens you did. Wow.
I like what you said. It's true. You do have to fight a lot. And because people, I almost feel like I had that mindset before I had a daughter that was disabled. I didn't understand. I had a client who had a disabled daughter, and I would look at her and I never did imagine her life or how hard she had it, because I was, I mean, unknowingly just kind of being selfish, moving along with my life. Like, oh, my son can walk and talk and whatever. But seeing her, she had to have, a nurse come in and take care of her daughter. And there was so many things that she endured, and I watched her. And then after I had my daughter, I was like, wow, I never could imagine until you experience it, or
Right.
till you follow somebody around for a day and see what they go through.
Right.
And you're like, wow, I wish I would have understood this.
Right.
And so I think that I think a lot of people out there still don't have a pure, an understanding of what some of these families go through,
Right.
with parking and
Don't get me started on parking.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Parking,
Yeah.
getting into somewhere, or just stuff like that. And
Right.
it's really, it's aggravating sometimes.
You know what I
But
think is interesting is one time I put a video of me getting my son dressed, shaving him, bathing him, dressing him. And I had a really good girlfriend and she said, I never thought about it. I mean, I see you show up, he's dressed, you're dressed, everybody's dressed. I never thought, oh wait, how does TJ get dressed? Or shaving him, or all of the other things. It's like, you don't think of that because it isn't in your world. It isn't part of your world. But
yeah,
I will say that it no matter what your trial is, and it could be a 50 million things, it does give you the ability to step back a little bit and go, okay, I don't think I understand exactly what's happening here, but I know that there's something going on, and I have such compassion for what you have going on. So that is the joy. That is one of the benefits of having a little bit of suffering, going through a little bit of suffering. It does kind of open up your world a little bit. And I do think there's a little bit of we've gone a little bit too far with that pendulum of suffering, because there are things that I don't know if it's really suffering, but in this
yeah,
world right now, we're kind of going through a little shift, and I think we need to center it back again. But it doesn't matter. As compassion and sympathy and empathy are good no matter what. So interesting. So now
true.
you're homeschooling. That is a choice because of COVID, or have you always? Well, she would only be what, kindergarten? So you're only at the
Yeah.
kindergarten phase, right?
So we put her in a program. She was in a special education program through the local public school system here.
Okay.
We
Like
put her there.
like a preschool program?
Right. Just
Okay.
for it's like a couple of hours a day, and they do day-to-day stuff with her. They work with, PT, OT. Now our insurance does cover, we have a PT, OT that comes to the house and works with her. So
Wow.
that we were already doing, but the public school was going to also offer
Yep.
speech and all the things that we needed. So we got her qualified there, and she was in school for a month. She was like maybe 3, I think. Yeah, 3. And that's when the whole COVID thing started, and they shut down the school
Right.
after she had only been there a month.
Right.
So we pulled her out. She did homeschool with the public school system, and it really wasn't, because it was just like supposed to be a couple of hours a day. So really the teacher would just send me assignments and I would just do things with her, because it wasn't a full-time
Right.
school thing.
Right.
And through that time, I continued to see clients. I worked a little bit when I could, but I noticed it was just getting harder and harder to balance both with
Did
both of
you
them.
did you
And
find
so,
because of this, because of the COVID restrictions and that you thought, okay, I can make this work. I'm going to schedule these appointments Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 3 o'clock. And so the client would have a time, you would have a time, and then the school would get, or the school would call you, or she would get sick, or the therapist isn't available, and would you be available? So it was that part of your responsibility that then you had to call the client and say, I'm sorry, I can't meet with you at 3 because I now have to take care of my daughter. Did you have that kind of problem scheduling? Was that an issue?
well, what it was, because I didn't want to run into that, what I was doing was I was working on the weekends,
Oh,
and my husband was taking over. But
oh,
by then he had started his own business,
yeah.
and his business was taking off. So he was working, watching kids, and I was working on the weekends.
Oh my gosh.
And our family was suffering greatly,
Right.
and we never got to see each other. And I started to really dread, being working on the weekends.
Yeah.
And it was tough. It
Yeah.
was really tough. And not that I didn't love my clients. I mean, they
Right.
were so amazing. When my daughter was born, I had clients showing up at my door with food
Oh my God.
and gifts. And I mean, they were amazing. I think at one point I was, I wanted to cry so hard, but I was like, I can't lose it in front of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, they were pretty amazing and supportive, and they
Don't-
still are,
Yeah, I was going to say, don't you find, and I've said this many times, but if I ever question humanity, if I ever question whether there's more good out there than there is bad, or the compassion that's out there, I just have to take TJ out, take him to the grocery store, take him to the mall or whatever, and the compassion that I see, people falling over themselves to open doors or whatever, is amazing, and it really does
Yeah.
bring out the best in people. And I love that you have a community that isn't necessarily tied in with the restriction. It's just the people that you mingle with that they're good. They're good people. I love that you share
Yeah.
that. It's so amazing.
I've experienced a lot of the same that you have. And I mean, I have experienced some, stares and people
Yeah,
gawking at her
yeah,
and her hands and stuff.
yeah,
And I don't, it used to bother me, and it really
yeah.
doesn't anymore, because I
No,
recognize that humanity is curious. Most people are
exactly.
just staring out of curiosity, right?
Exactly.
They're not mean spirited. And then you see little kids on the playground, whispering to each
Yes.
other,
Yes.
and I'm like, they're little kids, they don't know. But
You're right.
I've had a lot of smiles, and a lot of people say hello to her and
Uh-huh.
strike up a conversation with her, and just they're more kind than
Right.
anything.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so true. And I know I've had and what my kind of aha moment was when I saw babies, I mean 8 or 9 month old babies that would stare at my son. And I think that's when I recognized, all right, this is a human thing. This isn't a judgment thing. And I got to the point where it was hilarious because I would watch these little kids literally run into walls or signposts because they were staring at him. And so I would,
Yeah,
and it's almost like you're like, watch out, turn around, wait.
I
So
know.
it's a human thing. And I really do wish people would kind of lighten up on that because yeah, you know what? And we get used to it. We don't see it.
Yeah.
But then when I would step back, I'd go, all right, well, his arms are out. They call it the W, his arms are out like this because, which isn't a normal way to hold your arms. So it's like, oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
get it, and then children are so great because they ask you simple questions that you start going, why can't he walk, or what's wrong with him, or things like that. And you're like, okay, I see now this is an innocent child. So when an adult asks that, you think, well, you should have moved on a little farther, but they're just curious. It's human. I think we have to be so forgiving of things that are just humanity dealing with people. But you know, on the other hand, I also will stare at a gorgeous human. I mean, it's just like, wow, that person is beautiful, you know? So it goes both ways. Anything that's kind of unique, you know, it's also,
Mhm.
I think people get too hung up on stuff like that.
I
But
agree. I
yeah,
agree. Can you hear me okay?
absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I mean, doesn't, doesn't phase me anymore,
Right.
you know?
And then I
So,
love the interaction that you said between your girls, because that was probably the biggest blessing of all, was that to have siblings that I know with my daughter, and she has the son that's autistic, and then she has one that's just a couple years younger, and the way that they care, you know, for each other. And I always knew going off to school that his brothers and sisters were there with him, and so I never worried
yes.
about you know, anybody taking advantage of him or anything like that, because I knew that he was there with his brothers and sisters. And oh, that was such a relief. That was such a relief. So I love that has she had to defend her, or you know, has
You
she ever
know,
said anything like, don't look at my sister, and you're like, it's okay, or anything like that?
not yet. She
Okay.
hasn't yet. And we haven't, I don't think we've gotten there yet. She,
Okay.
but but I wouldn't put it past that one. I mean, that one has got some fire, and I
Yes.
could see her like later on down the line. I know when they get to be teenagers, it's going to be different. But I could totally see her. I feel like, God kind of gives us the kids in the direct order that we're supposed to have them.
Oh,
And
don't
it's
tell me
like,
that. Don't tell me that. Now I have to go back and go,
because
all right, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this? No.
because I'm like, I don't like, I feel like, I had her, but then the little one, and
Yeah,
and I was like, you know what? The reason they same thing. I was
right.
so distraught over them being so close in age and then having all those issues. But now I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
They're gonna defend each other. They're gonna be each other's best friends. They're gonna be super close. And who knows? Maybe when they're older, they want to move in together and help each other out.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly. Yeah.
so,
Oh, that's
but yeah, I could totally see her. She's pretty.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Can you help me get this thing off my screen? I don't know how it popped up. I'm trying to find a place. I've got my email that just popped up. I don't want to touch anything and lose you, Amanda. So anyway, okay. So what I want to know is, all right, so you have felt very good about yourself. You've done the training, you've gone to school, you've become an esthetician, you have clients. You have to be there you found the thing. You have to be feeling that you're successful and that you've achieved. Thank you. And so was there a point with the overwhelming responsibility of now having two children that I'm sure there wasn't a clock, right? You didn't check out at 6 o'clock and go, well, done with my shift. I can go to bed now. You have children you have to take care of 24/7. At one point, did you feel like you lost you?
Yeah, I did for sure. I think especially when COVID happened, because I had to shut down, and we were kind of forced to shut down there for a while,
Right.
and that was really hard. And I was like, I kind of didn't know who I was without my job. I know that sounds, but I was always, I guess, because of being a single mom and working ever since I've been working since I was 19.
Right.
So I was like, I need a paying job. Like
Right.
I was insistent, like I need to. And by this point, when COVID happened, my husband's business took off. I mean, his phone, he's got two phones. His phones are ringing off the hook. He's busy, busy, busy. He's working all the time, and he's working from home.
Oh,
So we were kind of all here together, and I kind of hit a dark place, because I was like, you know, this isn't, I need to see my clients, and I want to do my skincare, and I want to do, makeup for people and stuff. I had this desire to fulfill that, but I was needed so badly here. And there was, no school. And
Right.
so at first I kind of felt forced into this and I felt kind of bad, I didn't accept it well. But I think I prayed about it a lot and I just kind of started feeling like, you know what, um, this is not who you are. This is
Right.
what you did.
Right.
This is something that you did for people and it made people happy and they loved it, but this isn't who you are. And so I finally settled into the new role. It's not, what is it? Identity. Uh, it's not that I lost my identity. I just got a new identity,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. Right.
I'm
I
like,
love that.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to accept my new identity because this is not what I've known. And I was fighting it so bad.
Right.
I don't know why. Like, and my husband finally said, I had a real dark day and he says, do you know how valuable you are? You
Yeah.
are so valuable. The things that you do for this family and the care that you give for Alessia, he's like, it's just so, I need it. You're
Yeah.
valuable to this family. And so
You know
I think
what?
his work.
I think that's the ticket right there. What you just said about being told that you have value because you're a stay-at-home mom. And I
That's
think
right.
that's where the moms of the world are like, but I'm doing everything and nobody gives me a paycheck or a bonus or 2 weeks vacation or any of the accolades that when you're in the work, system, you get rewarded for what you do. And nobody ever says, gosh, mom, or hey, honey, I opened up that drawer and I saw there was clean laundry in there. That's amazing. They're kind of like, where's my t-shirt that I love? And you're like, it's in the laundry. But yeah, so I think
Mhm.
that's so fabulous that your husband gave you that validation. That's right there is such an important, somebody write that down. If you're feeling invisible right now, write that down is where are you getting your validation? Where are you getting your worth? And if you're not being told how important you are, just keeping a family together, then that's what you need to address. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Where were you in your health journey? Because you kind of went through I'm taking back my life health wise before COVID happened. So tell us
Mhm.
a little bit about that journey where you just said, I need to get healthy.
Yeah. So I gained a lot of weight with both of the pregnancies. It's like here I was eating, when I was 24 and pregnant, I just kind of ate whatever I wanted, but I didn't take into consideration that the clock had been ticking all this time. And here I am almost 40 and I'm kind of eating a lot of bad stuff and not taking care of myself. And I gained a lot of weight. And then here I was, hadn't even lost the baby weight from,
Yeah. 4 months.
you
No.
know,
Yeah.
and then I'm pregnant again. So
Mhm.
I ended up gaining even more weight. So I was probably the heaviest that I had ever been. And then I met all of you and I was able to go to that Brookburg retreat. And I I got some tools that helped me kind of get healthy and I actually lost a lot of weight and I started feeling a lot better
Mhm.
in my body and I hit some other some other hard stuff because I had ended up with some autoimmune stuff that was going on
Oh,
and that autoimmune stuff that was happening I was able to pinpoint where that was coming from and that's a whole other ball game but that all of that stuff kind of just lined up, everything lined up for me. And I was like, oh, I see. Oh, I see. And then I was able to kind of work through all of that. And now I feel really good. I'm probably the healthiest that I've ever been. And we even had COVID, we had that.
great,
So
great. I love that your
we got
husband
through that.
joined you on that journey because I think that's rare
We
that
did.
he started
Mm-hmm.
exercising with you and following the cruise control program.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you guys did that together. I think that's also very validating that you guys did that together. Have you both kind of, I mean, which do you think was the most important in the changes that you made? Do you feel like it was incorporating an exercise routine or a change in your nutrition or both? Or what do you think has stuck with you the most?
The nutrition. I think
Really?
that, yeah, the nutrition has stuck with us to where we're very conscious of, how much we're eating and what kinds of foods that we're eating, and almost well also how what we're feeding our kids.
Yeah.
You know, I think that really opened our eyes to what are our kids eating, you
Right.
know, and so we're very conscious of that with the kids, and we both have kept our weight off, which is
That's
crazy because
amazing.
it's
That's
been 3 years, I think.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was, and we did do it together,
Yeah.
and it made it easier to have a partner in that, because I'll be honest, if it was just me by myself, I don't know if I would have been able to. We really needed each other.
Right.
And so yeah, of course, you know, the men, they lose weight really fast. I
Oh,
mean,
I
he
know.
was like,
That's a whole nother podcast. It's like, I'm only going to have 4 hot dogs today. Oh, I lost a pound. I'm like, shut up. You know,
that's
you
exactly
accidentally
that
ate a
is
cracker, you know, and gained a pound, you know, so I know it's
that
so true.
that's exactly, but he's not even the you know, he's not even the same person that he was before.
Ah,
He's a totally different person. He's really worked hard,
right.
you know. So I think people look at us now and they're like, oh, look at you, and but the journey that we had was a very difficult, I mean, it's a very rough journey. And you know, the more we did it, and the more we navigated together. I remember at one point in the hospital, I believe it was my sister Andrea and I are like 2 years apart, so we're very close.
Yeah.
And everybody says we look alike and we talk alike, and you answer the phone and I think my dad doesn't know who it is.
Yeah.
He's like, gets us mixed up,
Right. Right.
almost like twins.
Yeah.
But she said to me, when Alessia was born, she was one of the ones that was very supportive. And she said to me, this is going to make or break your marriage.
Absolutely.
And uh, we had a very hard time in the beginning. I think that my husband was very, he was afraid to hold her. I think that he was blaming himself. You know, I don't know if that, you know, if other men have gone, I don't know if other women have, their husbands have gone through that. But I've spoken to a couple of other women who said, my husband was the same. He just was very quiet. He kind of shut down. I think men do handle things differently than we do.
Right.
And that's how he was. And it was a while before he kind of came around and started accepting it. He was angry. He had a lot of anger. And that was the day that I said, hey, this is going to make or break us. What's it going to be? And he's like, I don't want to be broken. And that was the day we kind of agreed that we were going to be a team on this, and we were going to do everything together. And we still do. I mean, the other day he took the kids so that I could go have my Galentine's brunch with my friends, because I don't, you know, we don't get to do that very often.
That's right.
You know, we don't get to do those things.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to know who to trust if it's not your family, you know, to trust others with your, you know, your child that's disabled. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, we're still a team,
Yeah.
you know.
That's, you know, I don't think, I mean, I have quite a few friends that were single moms, and it is absolutely impossible to get through life in general without some kind of a support system. And I do believe that there is a privilege when you do have a great family like you had that could help you. And it is a lot of times something that a lot of people don't have that back. It's absolutely impossible. And I remember somebody had told us about a kind of a day program that was offered in the area where we lived. And I thought, oh, well, that would be interesting. Let me go check that out for my son. And so I went over to this. It ended up being an assisted living home. And I was like, that's not what I'm looking for. But just to go there and to tour it and to see the kids that were there at this assisted living place. There was a girl there that her mom was single, and she was the breadwinner, and she didn't have any help. And so her only way that she could provide was to put her daughter in an assisted living so that she could go to work. And then after work, go and stay with her daughter at night, and then on the weekends. And I have so much admiration for people that somehow do it. They somehow get by. A lot of times you can depend on older children. I had, 5 other children that could babysit. and, or get him off the bus at 3 o'clock if I couldn't be home when the bus, got there after school. So that, like you said, I could go out to lunch with some friends, or my husband and I could go out on a date night. We had built-in babysitters. If he would have been our first, like you were saying, I don't know how many other children I would have had, so it's just amazing. And I have so much compassion for people that don't have a good support system around them, because it's so important. And sometimes that support system becomes your community. It isn't family. But yeah.
That's true. That is very true. I actually, I'm glad you said that. I just met another APERT mom here in San Antonio. It's so rare. I think we have probably that's only 4 APERT kids in all of San Antonio that I know of in the city.
Right.
And she, she's an infant. She's maybe 3 months old. And because the community is so tight knit and APERT syndrome is so rare, we had friends in common that got us together. And now we're, I'm talking to her, texting her every day, checking on her, seeing how she's doing. What do you need? Do you need anything? And she's doing the same for me. And I think we even have a little a social media page for APERT moms. And the one of the other moms that heads up the page, she always has, okay, so and so's having surgery. Let's talk let's talk to them. Let's send them good wishes. Let's send them prayers and
now
give them the support.
A Facebook page?
It is, yes.
Okay.
It's a Facebook page for APERT moms, I believe it's what it's called. And it's just a group there that we, we're able to kind of talk to one another and ask questions. And, some moms are like, I don't know, like, is this, my son or my daughter's having this or that? And because it's so rare, it's kind of like, we all kind of understand. And so everybody kind of gets to jump in and offer their support and their love. And it's such a supportive group of people. And
spell that for me. Spell the is it AP or AB?
APERT. APERT.
Okay. APERT. So just look for APERT Facebook so that you can find it if you have anybody or if you know of anybody. Is that particular genetic is there a spectrum with that, or does everybody pretty much have the same symptoms if you have that genetic disorder?
They almost look, I feel like we say as moms that our kids kind of look like brothers and sisters.
Oh, okay.
They kind of look similar as far as their facial features. They look similar.
Right.
It's actually kind of cute. I see them all and I'm like, they just look like brothers and sisters to me.
Yeah.
But that, and then as far as the other issues, it's almost like, with any disability, some of them are more severe cases than others.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you will see
spectrum.
some.
Yeah.
That's right. It is. You're right.
And
so
then
the answer
also
would be yes.
like mental disability, is there a spectrum that runs with that as well? Some are more severely affected because of the mental issues. Okay.
Yeah. So some are more delayed than others.
Okay.
But I know there's I actually have some adults that have APERT syndrome that are on my Facebook page as friends. And some of them have attended college. They've gone to school, graduated high school. Cognitively, they're fine. Maybe there's delays there. We have a young man here in San Antonio who has APERT syndrome, and he attends UTSA college, and he drives a car.
Oh, that's
and he's he works in the athletic department for the UT football team, and so a lot of them, I think they recently did an interview with him too. And he just, when they interviewed him, he was ear to ear smiles, and he was like, I'm just happy that they're accepting me, and they're, that I'm allowed to be here. I'm just happy. He was a very well-adjusted kid, and he seemed like he was really happy where he was. So a lot of them go on to be pretty successful adults.
And have some kind of an adult life. That's
mostly, yes. Mostly,
so where do you see Amanda? Do you feel as though I mean, your children are young, but like you said, you also have a son that graduated and he's in the military right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you've kind of got this like, wait, I'm supposed to be an empty nester. What's happening here? Where do you see Amanda? Have you found, do you have days where you go, I've just disappeared. I have become nothing. And then other days where you're like, I am the mom here. I am amazing. Where do you find your self-worth right now? And what do you see? Do you see anything? Do you look into the future and go, oh, I have to let those dreams go? Or do you still feel pretty confident that there'll be some Amanda time in the future? Or where are you at that point?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for asking that. I do feel like I still got some time left. I'm like, no, I think I can do, I know that there's something that I am supposed to be doing. I'm not sure exactly what it is in the future.
Huh?
I know there's something though, and maybe it has to do with helping other moms, I think. But right now I feel where I am, I'm very content with where I am now. Now, a couple months ago, maybe not so much. It's been it's been kind of a progressive thing for me. Each day it gets easier.
Right.
And when I first started homeschooling, my mom is amazing. My mom is a retired teacher, a retired reading specialist.
Oh gosh.
And she says, I'm going to come over and I'm going to help you get your girls assessed, because we had made the decision to homeschool. And a lot of it had to do with the whole mask, to get controversial, the whole mask argument.
Oh, for her little face. I mean, that's just not possible. Yeah.
She can't breathe out of her nose. And what
Right.
you were saying about the Americans with Disabilities Act, that was another thing that came up. Some of those kids are not able to, and they have to have accommodations in place, whether they're flying on an airplane.
Oh.
Society needs to recognize that not all people with disabilities are able to wear that mask, whether it be a physical abnormality like Alessia, or a actual physical problem where they can't breathe out of their nose, which she can't. And so I think it's just kind of a rare problem. It's a lot of people didn't understand it.
Right.
And I think her school would have probably given her an accommodation.
Right.
But I do know that a lot of the other parents were kind of not happy about the kids that were getting accommodations, because they were just worried about their own children.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I were like, you know what? I was like, okay, we're going to homeschool. So at first it was kind of a forced thing. And then my mom got involved and helped me. And then day by day, I had a lot of self-doubt. And every day that went by, like you said, I was like, I could do this. I could do this. My kids are learning. My 6-year-old is reading. I've taught her how to read. So I'm like, how did I learn how to do these things? So I have my days where I feel just like, yeah, I'm awesome. And then I have some days where I feel like, not so much. But but the one thing I do have now is I have hope for the future, because I feel like a lot of the hard stuff is behind us. And now I just want to, like you, very much like you, I just want to help other moms, whether they have children with disabilities or not. I just want to be there for them and offer them a hand like I had.
Right.
I want to pay that forward, because I had so many people help me,
Right.
that I want to seek out people that need help and say, hey, I went through that. I had people to help me. So now that I'm able to, and my daughter's mostly done with surgeries, now I can jump in and, what do you need? And so
I
that's
think
kind of
that's
where I am.
probably the biggest thing right there. And is the paying it forward. I think it helps when faith is things hoped for. And there are many days when hope is gone and you start thinking, there's no way this is going to change. This is going to be my life forever. And when you lose hope, that's when you feel like you've hit your bottom. But it's amazing how just paying it forward changes that mindset. Just looking for opportunities to somehow repay somehow the gifts that were given to you. Like you said, we both have supportive husbands. We both have participating families. So there are others that don't have that. So what can I do to alleviate some of their pain and suffering? And it's the only way to get out of those days when you've just lost all hope, and there's can't be faith without hope. And you just think, I don't want to do this anymore. And how do I get out of this? And then it doesn't take much if you just can get out of that mindset. But I'm certainly not saying that's an easy process, because there's been more than just a few days when I've gone, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I appreciate you mentioning that. I really do. Well, thank you, Amanda. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I love the female community. I'm sorry, I'm not bashing men, but I just am amazed at how we can meet in the strangest ways and yet form friendships that I feel like will go on. I mean, I feel like I'm going to be in some assisted living place myself. You know, as a 90-year-old woman, I'm like, I wonder what Amanda's doing today. And I'll be looking you up on social media. And I think that's fabulous. So thank you so much.
We'll get together.
Absolutely. Please, somehow, COVID gods, go away. Yeah, we definitely will do that. So thank you so much. We will talk again, hopefully on a beach somewhere. Absolutely.
Renee, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It really is. You too.
Okay. All righty.
Listeners, thank you, all of you, for listening today. And I really hope that you will join me every week as I have guests on like Amanda, who have gone through things, and we will be exploring this path of life called womanhood. And we will all be telling our stories, and hopefully we will be learning from each other, because you know what? Being invisible is no way to go through life. So we will see you next week and every week, because look, you're visible. Bye. We're good. We're good. All right.
We did good.
We did good. This is amazing. Thank you so much. I think it's so amazing. I think that it's the best thing about things like this is, like you said, you know, how rare this whatever you call it, a genetic disorder, whatever you call it, how rare that is. But doggone it, if there was one person out there that was like, I just heard a podcast the other day and you wouldn't believe it, they were talking about your daughter. Or is there a female male thing with that? Is it genetically more prominent in females or males? Have you ever?
You know, they didn't say in male or females, but they did say ethnicity. That it's very strangely enough in the Native American. What did they say? Was it Native American? There was an ethnicity group. I mean, there was a group where it was more
kind of like the sickle cell or the other type of.
Very
Jewish prominent. I can't remember, but yeah, isn't that interesting? Huh.
Yeah. So I that's one thing I didn't know. So, and I recently went through a miscarriage. I didn't realize I was pregnant. This was about 5 or 6 months ago, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
And it kind of just happened. And then it was over as fast as I found out. And we're kind of just looking at each other like, what just happened? I honestly didn't think, that could, I could have any more.
So you were calling urologists. The vasectomy will be on Tuesday.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you're getting snipped, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was like, no.
Yeah.
It happened, but that happened for a reason. And I honestly cannot see myself doing that again, or the fact that I had back-to-back kids with birth defects and then going through that again was like, no, I wouldn't have trusted, who knows,
No, that's amazing.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So.
All right, girl.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I'll be looking at you. I'll be looking at you on the media.